Welcome back to O-Level Oasis for Cambridge O-Level Biology 5090. We've successfully completed our previous chapter, Relationships of Organisms with One Another and with the Environment, and today we're going to start practicing its topical past paper questions. The practice paper is attached in the description as well as in the pinned comment below, so make sure to check it out before following along. With that said, let's begin our past paper practice. First question states, biofuels are made from plant material or animal waste. They are used as a replacement for fossil fuels such as petrol and oil. Fossil fuels were made over long periods of time, millions of years ago. Biofuels may or may not be a sustainable resource. Part A asks, describe what is meant by a sustainable resource. This is a straightforward definition question, so we simply write, a sustainable resource is produced as rapidly as it is removed, so that it does not run out. Moving on to Part B, it states, alcohol, which is ethanol, is used as a biofuel. It can be made from plants, such as sugarcane, which grow in tropical countries such as Brazil. It then asks, describe how a living organism can be used to convert sugar found in plants into alcohol. Here, the living organism being referred to is yeast. Yeast carries out fermentation, where it breaks down the sugar from plants in the absence of oxygen. During this process, the sugar is converted into ethanol or alcohol and carbon dioxide. Therefore, the answer we write is, yeast is used to ferment the sugar from plants under anaerobic conditions, producing ethanol, which is alcohol and carbon dioxide. Now, Part C says, Figure 6.1 gives some information about alcohol production and deforestation in Brazil from 2012 to 2016. The graph shows two trends over the years. The alcohol production line rises steadily from just over 20 billion decimeter cube in 2012 to nearly 30 billion decimeter cube in 2016. The deforestation line also shows an overall increase from around 5,000 km square to about 8,000 km square, with only a slight decrease in 2014. This means that as alcohol production increased, deforestation also generally increased. The question asks, suggest an explanation for the changes shown in Figure 6.1 and describe the possible impact of these changes. Since this is a graph interpretation question, we first observe the trend and then explain it. As alcohol production has increased, so has deforestation. A likely explanation is that more forest land is being cleared to grow sugarcane for ethanol production. This results in the destruction of habitats, causing a decline in biodiversity. On the positive side, using ethanol as a biofuel reduces the need to burn fossil fuels. As a result, less carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, helping to reduce the greenhouse effect and slow down global warming. So the answer we write is, as alcohol production has increased, so has deforestation. Areas of forest may be cut down to grow sugarcane to produce alcohol, leading to a lack of habitats for organisms and a decrease in biodiversity. However, increased use of ethanol as a biofuel means less fossil fuel is burned, so less carbon dioxide is released, reducing the greenhouse effect and global warming. In the next question, we will begin with Part B, which is relevant to our chapter. The background information says, Azolla is a genus of small ferns that float in slow-flowing or stationary fresh water. Azolla has cavities in its leaves that contain nitrogen-fixing bacteria called Anabaena azothli. In some parts of the world, farmers grow azolla in their rice fields. Rice fields are flooded with water so that rice plants grow half submerged. So here, we have rice plants growing together with azolla in a flooded field. Now, Part B asks, farmers grow azolla in rice fields to increase the rice yield. Suggest why the rice yield increases. The key point here is the presence of nitrogen-fixing bacteria inside the azolla leaves. These bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates, which are released into the water or soil. The rice plants absorb these nitrates through their roots and use them to make proteins and amino acids, which are essential for growth. Better growth results in a higher rice yield. So the answer we write is, nitrogen-fixing bacteria produce nitrates, which enter the water or soil. The rice plants absorb the nitrates to make proteins and amino acids, which are used for growth, increasing the rice yield. Now, first question of Part C asks, describe how azolla removes carbon from the atmosphere. This question is testing your understanding of photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere enters the azolla leaves through the stomata by diffusion. During photosynthesis, this carbon dioxide combines with water to produce glucose. Some of the glucose is then converted and stored as starch, so the carbon becomes stored within the plant. Therefore, the answer we write is, carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaves through the stomata. During photosynthesis, carbon dioxide combines with water to form glucose. Some of the glucose is stored as starch. Part 2 then asks, explain why removing carbon from the atmosphere may help the global environment. Since carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, removing it from the atmosphere reduces its concentration. This decreases the greenhouse effect, which in turn helps reduce global warming and climate change. So the answer we write is, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere decreases the greenhouse effect, reducing global warming and climate change. Finally, Part D asks, different species of azolla are found naturally in many countries. Azolla has also been introduced by humans to some countries where it is not native. When azolla is introduced to a country, it can have an impact on natural freshwater ecosystems. Suggest how azolla can have an impact on these freshwater ecosystems. When azolla is introduced into a new environment, it can spread very quickly because it may have no natural predators or diseases to control its growth. It competes with native aquatic plants for resources such as light, space, and nutrients. As a result, native species may decline, leading to reduced biodiversity and the loss of some species. So the answer we write is, azolla competes with other plants for resources such as light and nutrients. It may have no natural consumers or pathogens, allowing it to spread rapidly. This can reduce biodiversity and cause the loss of species. Now we move on to the MCQs. This question shows a food web with worms, small mammals, snakes, plants, predatory birds, insects, and small birds. It asks, which organisms in this food web are primary consumers? Remember, primary consumers are organisms that feed directly on producers, and the producers in this food web are the plants. So we simply identify which organisms eat the plants. From the food web, insects feed directly on plants, making them the primary consumers. Therefore, A is the correct answer. Next, question says, the processes listed occur in living organisms in a food chain. 1 is excretion, 2 is photosynthesis, 3 is respiration. It then asks, which processes would result in a loss of energy from a food chain? Think about what happens to energy in a food chain. Energy is lost through excretion, where waste materials still contain chemical energy, and through respiration, where energy is released as heat. Photosynthesis, on the other hand, captures energy from sunlight instead of causing a loss. Therefore, B, which says 1 and 3, is the correct answer. Next, question says, trees in a forest need a constant supply of nitrates to continue growing. The diagram shows some of the stages of the nitrogen cycle that provide the necessary nitrates. Which stage in this cycle is not brought about by living bacteria? Carefully think about each stage. Most steps in the nitrogen cycle involve bacteria, such as converting ammonium compounds into nitrates. However, lightning is a natural physical process, not a biological one. It converts atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen compounds without the involvement of bacteria. Therefore, B is the correct answer. Then another question asks, what is a method of conserving fish stocks? The options include fishing in protected areas, using nets with a small mesh size, having closed fishing seasons, and only catching young, immature fish. The best conservation method is to have closed fishing seasons. During these periods, fishing is temporarily stopped, allowing fish enough time to breed and increase their population before fishing resumes. Therefore, C is the correct answer.